I think we're live. All right, guys, welcome back to the Queen of the Mat. This is our first episode of the season. And as you guys can see, we have someone new with us. So we thought it would be fun if we all introduced each other. So Brooke is going to start.
Okay, so we first have our podcaster by day, wrestler and coach by night, Mateah Rail. She is a two-time NCAA All-American. She's a U23 fourth, or at U23 she took fourth, and then Senior World Team Trials All-American as well.
Oh, yes. I'm excited to be here. Okay, so now I'm going to be introducing Lauren Louive. I thought that it was Lauren Louie for a while, but it is Louive, if you guys were wondering. She's actually one of my training partners, and we asked her on because Lauren and I always get into really deep conversations about wrestling, and we like to argue sometimes about it. So we thought it would be perfect and interesting to have her on. So Lauren is a U.S. national champion, a three-time Olympic trials competitor, two-time Final X competitor, senior Pan Am silver medalist, two-time WCWA, which is Women's College Wrestling All-American. She's the first female to wrestle in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club at the University of Iowa. She's an Olympic Training Center resident athlete. Lauren, how long were you at the OTC again?
3 years? Two or 3 years. Yeah.
2 or 3 years. That's cool. And she didn't want me to mention it, but she is a bodybuilder.
I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm gonna give
basically are.
Basically.
She's a beast.
I just lift weights. That's all, Mateah.
She's strong and jacked. You kind of look like a bodybuilder. Have you ever been mistaken for a bodybuilder before?
Yes. But that's not fair. Yeah, okay. All right, my turn to introduce Brooke. Okay, we have Brooke Crawley, who wrestled for Brookfield East. She's girls state champion in 2020. She wrestled for North Central College in Illinois. And her jiu-jitsu accolades are out of this world. So, no-gi pans blue belt champion, 9-time IBJJF champion. Sorry, I don't know if I had enough J's in there. And then, guys, this weekend, calling it out, future world champion this weekend in no-gi in Vegas. So, you guys want to check some jiu-jitsu out, you can watch Brooke slay this weekend.
Slay. And the coolest thing about it is that Lauren and I are going to support and watch Brooke in Vegas this weekend. So that's going to be fun. Let's go. Okay. One thing I wanted to mention is a lot last year we talked about results and we kind of went over results, which is something we still want to do, but maybe not as much this year. So I think we're mainly just going to touch on, the few notable things that Brooke and I noticed. And then we're going to get into some cool different topics that involve women's wrestling. So one thing that I actually wanted to point out, and I was just talking to Nate and Jacob earlier about this, and we both pointed out that 132 is freaking stacked this year. If you guys look at the rankings that were released today, I'm just going to go through them so you guys can hear. And Brooke, I'm guessing you know a lot of these names. So we had number 1 at 132 is Madeline Peach. Then we have Lily Banks, then Natalie Clovetter, then Haley Fletcher, who's number 4. Addison Olsen. Then number 6 is Amelia Poplowski. And just to kind of put it in picture for you guys, or put it into frame, I think is a saying, Amelia was a Fargo blood round this year. So she almost All-American at Fargo, and she's ranked 6 at 132. So that just kind of goes to show how deep this weight class really is. And then we have number 7, Frankie Groom, then Chesney Bartosik, then Kit Alsaker, I think is how you pronounce her last name, and then Savannah Hoyer. So that is just something I wanted to point out that I think is probably the deepest weight class of the year. We almost had kind of the top girls from 120 and 126 all bumping up to 132. And yeah, we were talking before this, Lauren, Brooke, and I are talking, and I don't know, you guys, do you think it's something where they're going to go down later in the season, or do you think they're all just not wanting to really cut weight and just kind of stay at 132?
It could be a pinch test thing. So
yeah.
It could be something from, they pinched at a certain weight, and so but closer to the end of the season, they go down. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And I also think a lot of girls, almost for me, every year I went up a weight class in high school. I started at 106, and then I actually just went up to 120. So I think that's kind of normal.
I think it's very normal. They're growing still a lot. They're still very young, so makes sense.
That's true.
Yeah, it could also be the it is I want to say a fad, but it is like a more of a trend now to see the athletes not want to cut weight and kind of stay where they're at. So.
Yeah, and almost like when I was in high school, that really wasn't like heard of. Most people or almost everyone was cutting weight to some degree, but some of these girls are able to wake up, eat breakfast, and then go weigh in. And I think that there's pros to that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So one more thing I also want to mention with the weight class thing, I also think that 138 and 145 is pretty stacked this year. So that's just my top 3 hardest weight classes that I was just thinking about. Okay, so I'm going to go into the biggest upset of the weekend, my freshman watch list, and then Brooke is going to go into her freshman to watch. So the biggest upset of the weekend that I pointed out was 126 at the papermaker. Taya Johnson, who is a freshman, she beat MJ Newman. I believe it was 4-2. I think it was kind of a close scoring match. And Carly Krasuski. And one thing I wanted to point out is that I've wrestled MJ before, and I've wrestled with MJ, and she is a tough wrestler. She actually got some wins over a couple college girls at a college tournament this year. So I'm excited to see where Taya Johnson goes. She kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't really know that name until she beat MJ and Kylie. But yeah, I think at 126 she is number 2 right now. So I think that she's a possible contender for the state championships. Right now she's below Delia Collins. Okay, so going into my freshman watch list, I have, and I don't know if I know how to pronounce this last name, Amaya D. Oust of Manitowoc Lincoln. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. She took first at the papermaker. I believe it was an invite papermaker tournament at 100. And then my second freshman is Brinley Miller. She's from Brilliant, and she is 114. She pinned Joelle Rie of Nina, which, Brooke, we've mentioned Joelle a lot, even last year. She's kind of consistently been in the top 10. So I'm just excited to see where Brinley goes. I think that Brinley and Amaya both have bright futures. And then also my last one is Daylin Cody. Lauren, I think you know Daylin actually from all the ISI camps.
Yep. She's been.
Yeah, she's a good kid, but she's from Princeton, Green Lake. She pinned this year. She just pinned Dakota Affey, who took third at state last year at 114. Daylin is ranked 6 at 120, but I think she's going to be dropping down. So I expect her to be placing, I would say, top 3 or 4 at the state tournament at 114. I think she'll probably go down after the 2-pound allowance is my guess.
And is she a freshman?
Yes, she's a freshman.
Okay. So third at U State?
Oh no, so she pinned Dakota, who took third at state last year.
Got it. Sorry, my bad.
I was like, no, you're good. I was like, dang, she pinned a girl who took third, and she's a freshman. So
yeah, that's awesome.
I don't know. Yeah, I think Dakota is, let me check what grade she is. She's in 10th grade, so just a year older. Yeah. That's all I got for my top freshman.
Okay. Then for my freshman watch list, I kind of was looking at the 100-pound list. There's a lot of freshmen that are ranked already. Dylan and Cassidy, they have already been wrestling each other, and they have very eventful matches. I think that's what you said, Taya. I haven't seen them wrestle yet, but the last time they wrestled, Dylan beat Cassidy. It was 4-2. So that's a super close match. So that'll be really fun to see how that plays out by the end of the year, assuming that they both make it to state. And then we have Bryn Engel. She's number 5 at 100 pounds. So yeah, those 3, that'll be fun to watch them all wrestle each other. And then at 152, we have Brinley Vaughn. Vaughn. She's now ranked at number 3, and she's from Matoma. She won the Royal Invite, and she's a 2-time youth state champ. So seeing that she's a freshman the next 4 years will be really awesome for her, just to see how she does the next 4 years. So that's what I have so far.
I agree with that. I think Brinley's going to be one of the girls to watch in the next couple of years. One thing I also really love watching, like the lighter weights, like the 100, 107 pounds, because they are eventful. It seems as if there's just so much back and forth. So I really like. I agree. And it's like they're usually very high scoring matches compared to the higher weights. So yeah, it's just fun to watch that. I love the speed there.
Yeah. Okay, and then moving on to some results from the paper maker. You said it was an invite.
I think so.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed going through all of the results is a lot of the lower classmen, meaning like the freshmen and sophomores, they were winning their brackets or at least like placing in the top 5. They would a lot of times, for example, in the 100-pound bracket, Amaya D. Oust, which you just talked about, she's a freshman and she won over a senior and actually ended up pinning her. So that's really awesome for her just to see that. And that was like a really big trend through all of these brackets, which I think is really cool. I think we also, like last year, Taya, we talked about how seeing all these like lower classmen come up, and because they've been wrestling now for years, they're able to start younger. That I think every year as like the freshmen keep coming up, they're just going to be more and more like skilled. Which I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that, but
yeah, you've seen it at Olympic trials, even on that level. You've seen like, man, all the younger generation was just coming in and like kind of wiping everybody out. So I think that's kind of across the board, and that's probably just how, as wrestling evolves, it's gonna continue, and that's what we want, right? Like we don't want that's what we want. We want it to keep evolving, but
so yeah, that's just one thing that I noticed. Now moving on to the 114 bracket. Like I said, there was 4 freshmen placing in the top 5 of that bracket, which is really cool. We have at 120, Dalen Cody. She's a freshman. She pinned Eve Rausch, who is a senior as well. So you see that freshman senior kind of battle right there. We have at 126, freshman taking first, Taya Johnson of Menasha over Kylie Kursawiski of Nina. You talked about that. And then MJ taking third. That's, once again, really awesome. And that's going to be a super fun. All of those 3 girls, like you said, Taya, that's going to be really fun to watch them continue wrestling for the rest of the year. And then at 132, we had Chesney Bartosik. She's a sophomore. She ended up taking first. And then as second place, we had Savannah Oyer. She's a freshman. She took second. I already said that. And then someone we talked about a lot last year, who's a sophomore now, Amari Richard of Nina. She ended up taking third. And Amari, like, it's still awesome. She took third at this first tournament of the season, but she was doing really, really well all of last year. We talked about her a lot. So I thought that was interesting that a sophomore and a freshman ended up placing above her. And then one other thing that I wanted to point out was at 165, our champ was Lauren Rubert of Menasha. She ended up pinning Renesmee Rhodes, which we talked about her a lot last year. I don't know if you remember that, Taya. Yeah. I don't remember Lauren Rubert, so I don't know if I don't remember talking about her, so that's why I pointed that out. And that is about it for that tournament. One other thing is Menasha ended up taking first as a team, and then Schwano ended up taking second, and it was super close. It was 321 points to 315 points. So
dang, that's close.
Really close.
Everyone always makes fun of me because I want to say Shawano, because that's how it looks, doesn't
Why
it?
not?
Shawano,
What is it?
Shwano,
Oh,
right?
is that what I said?
Yeah, you said it right,
Oh,
but
okay.
I
I
always
thought you said it was wrong. I was like, what?
wait, before you move on, Brooke, to the
Yeah.
Royal invite, I wanted to talk about kind of the same thing with like freshmen coming up and just the higher level wrestling. I wanted to ask your guys' opinion on it. I think that two factors is like coaching is so different nowadays. Like when I was a kid, when I was like a youth wrestler even, there was one style of coaching, and that was we go live a bunch and we just go hard, and that's how we get good at wrestling. And I think a lot of coaches are bringing more strategy into the equation. I also think another factor that might play into that is just the availability of film and maybe even like social media, so people are able to see what other higher level athletes are doing. Because I mean, you even like look at high level athletes who are influencers. You see that they have a nutritionist, a mindset coach, and then these girls kind of are, or even like the boys are starting to understand like this is what we need to do if we want to get to a higher level. And I know, Lauren, you mentioned one time there was a girl you knew who has a nutritionist and she's a high schooler, and it's like when we were high schoolers, that wasn't really ever a thing.
Yeah. You struggled through eating the school food.
Yeah.
You didn't know that you should pack your lunch. I mean, you probably knew, but a lot of people didn't. Yeah, no, nutritionist, that's definitely not involved. But another thing too is like, I mean, even the availability of clubs now, like club wrestling's so big now. And like when I was in high school, like there was like one club in the area, maybe, and if you're in more of a rural area, that's not even an option. So like there definitely club availability too. Because if you were in off season, like I remember like our off seasons, like there just weren't practices. There's just nowhere to train. There's just nowhere to practice. So you did another sport so you could keep in shape, but that's not the same thing as being on the mat. So like that's another reason too, just the opportunities that are available to compete all year long also. So there's more competitions now off season in the freestyle season. There's all kinds of camps and stuff now. It wasn't always like that.
That's a really good point, Lauren. I do think it probably is the clubs that was one of the main factors for that. That's good.
Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot actually before this. Is like it's a lot harder for these girls joining now in high school if they haven't been wrestling, because that's kind of how it is in boys wrestling right now. Is like you can't really join and like expect to do well if you haven't been wrestling like for a really long time, or at least like at a club. Like it's just kind of how it is now. So yeah, I definitely think the clubs are a very big deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is like the okay, in general, yes, I do agree, but I think that once in a while there is some like anomaly, how do you say it? Anomalies? Anomalies? I can't say it right now, but you guys know what I mean. Like
an
there
outlier.
Yes, there are some kids who start in high school that end up doing so good, but I do agree, because I think in youth wrestling is when you really develop those skills and the foundation. And if you start wrestling when you're a freshman or sophomore and you have to learn how to shoot a single leg or a high crotch, you are going to be way behind. But some kids are just so good at learning that they just catch up quick.
Yeah, that is true.
Not to discourage all of you who want to try wrestling as a freshman. Try it. It's worth it.
That's true. Okay, I'm gonna grab a charger real quick for my Chromebook, but you guys, Brooke, can you keep going over the Royal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so for the Royal invite, we had very small brackets for this tournament. Like the first like few weights, there was only 2 girls, so they only wrestled once. So yeah, very small brackets. But at 114, first place we had Kylie Klum, which she's ranked number 2, and so she ended up winning that. She had a fall in her finals match at 2 minutes and 57 seconds, and then I just wanted to point out that third place match, we had Isabel Tracy. She's a sophomore. She ended up pinning her girl in 35 seconds, which is so crazy. It had to have been like some type of throw or something. I don't really know, but I just want to point that out. And then at 132, we had Frankie Groom. She's a sophomore. She took first. And then at 165, I don't know, Taya, do you want to say this one?
Yeah, this was kind of a big one. And so at 165 weighed Lainey Vaughn of Watoma Wild, which I had not heard of her before this, but she beat Kimura Hutter at the Royal Invite, which was 11-6 in the finals. And I think this was a big one. Like I said, I didn't really know who Vaughn was before this. She was at 145 last year, so she bumped up 2 weight classes. Last year she didn't make it to state. She lost in the sectional finals. But Kimura is a good wrestler. She did a lot of off-season tournaments, and she did relatively well. So I think Lainey is going to be another girl to watch. And then
yeah, that's all I have for that one.
So the GET, I don't know if it's the GET or the GET invite, but
these invites have crazy names.
Yeah,
Papermaker, the GET. What?
Yeah, they're just trying to confuse us, I think.
With the Papermaker, what does that mean?
I don't know. I wonder what school that's at, because I wonder if somehow that goes with their mascot or something.
I'm like, the GED? What? The GET.
Yeah, what is a Papermaker? Wait, Papermaker mascot. I'm looking that up right now. What the heck? You guys, it is. I wish I could share my screen right now. Wait, maybe I can. It is some sort of like a bee. It's like a bee. If you guys look up Papermaker mascot, it's like a bee.
Not to hate
like
on
a
whoever
bee,
the
like a bug
Papermakers
bee.
are. I just was.
That's true.
Surprised.
Yeah, we're not hating. I'm just confused on what a Papermaker is. Is it a wasp?
People who make
that actually,
paper, Mateah.
Thanks, Lauren. It's a wasp. A paper wasp.
It's a what?
A paper wasp.
A paper, okay, like a bee, but
yeah, oh my gosh, they actually look pretty scary. But okay. So that makes sense.
You guys are curious. Look it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the GET we had at 107 Amy Anderson. She is number 9 at 107. She beat Dylan Albrecht, who Brooke. She was on your freshman list. The reason that Dylan is ranked 100, I believe, is because she obviously wrestled 107, but you can check what they weighed in at, and she weighed in at 103. I was looking, so I believe that Dylan is going to be at 100, but like I said, she competed at 107, and that's a good win for Amy. Okay, so that's all we have for results. Now we're going to be moving into the topic of the day, which is that next year, girls won't be able to compete against boys. Well, most girls. It's a little bit confusing. We were talking about it beforehand, but I'm just going to go and read through kind of the rules, and then we're just going to kind of debate or talk about the pros and cons that we thought. Okay, so starting next school year, schools that have an officially recognized girls wrestling team, which I assume will be most, they're going to require the female wrestlers to compete only against other girls' programs. So it means that in dual meets and in tournaments, female wrestlers from these schools will only face opponents from other girls' teams. But the rule applies specifically to schools with recognized girls wrestling teams. So schools without these programs may still have female wrestlers compete against male wrestlers. But the only thing about that is if girls are competing against male wrestlers, it means that they don't have an officially recognized girls team. So these girls aren't going to be able to wrestle at the girls state wrestling tournament. I believe they might still be eligible to try to make the boys state tournament, but they're only going to be able to compete against girls at state if they are officially recognized team. And then there's one more change, but we're not really going to debate it, is that this year they are going to recognize a girls team state champion, but it's just going to be from the scoring system from the state tournament. But there is going to be a girls state wrestling team tournament, and that's going to be in the following year, so 26-27. So that's another adjustment that they made to the rules. But the main one, I want to talk about is just how girls aren't really going to be able to wrestle boys if they're an officially recognized girls team. Lauren, did you want to start?
Sure. I think girls competed against the boys because we had to. So I think we're moving in the direction that we want to go in, because originally, like, why did we compete against the boys? Because we didn't have enough girls. There weren't enough girls to compete against each other. So I think we're moving in the direction that we want to be moving in. So I think that's helpful, definitely. I think there's some benefits and there's some positives and negatives both to wrestling against the boys. Like, I think training with the boys can be a helpful tool, but I don't think that we need to necessarily compete against them. I don't think it's helpful to compete against them. I think that training with the boys, can make you tough. It can definitely make you tough, and competing against the boys will make you tough too. But I also think that when we compete against the boys, that we're competing against a perception with unrealistic expectations. So it's a perception of what's possible for the girls with unrealistic expectations because they're competing against the boys. So like maybe a girl that's like a hammer, she goes out and she has these unrealistic expectations to like beat this boy who is the same weight as her. Oh, where's my camera? The same weight as her, right? But just because they're the same weight doesn't mean they're equal in strength and equal in everything else. So she has these expectations of like being able to do well against him. And then if she doesn't, it kind of destroys not only ego, but like kind of encouraging her to continue on. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I really like those points, and it's funny because I had a lot of the same points. But I just want to go into one con that I had. I think
you have anything to argue with me on that? You don't have
no, because I agree with you. But
okay,
because I completely agree with you.
I have other points if you want me to go to the other points.
So here, okay, so Laura's just trying to pick a fight with me right now. I feel like
that's why you brought me here. I'm just trying to do my job.
So my whole thing is, you said that girls push boys in practice, which I agree. I coach girls, and I have I see these girls wrestle each other in girls class, and we go live, but it's like I don't feel like they're really going live. And then I see them in the boys youth class wrestling these boys. It's like you're going 10 times harder than you did in live against the girls. And so I agree. I think the boys do push them for many reasons. Like, one is because they're not really going to be as friendly with the boys, or they're not like friends outside of the wrestling room. So that can be good. And I know like Lauren and Brooke, actually, I wrestled both of you guys. Like, sometimes I do struggle to want to go hard because you guys are my friends and I don't want to like hurt you. And so
yeah, that's a girl thing.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll go with the boys. Yeah, I think so. And so I think that is a good thing going with the boys, because it's like, well, they don't really care if I get hurt, so I'm going to also maybe kind of go harder on them too. But it's like, is that something that we need to change in the culture of women's wrestling too, where we don't, like, where we kind of make it okay to go hard on each other? Or do you think that's always going to be something that's an issue in the practice room?
I think you grow out of it at certain levels, because you look at the US Open, those girls aren't feeling bad for hurting each other. They're not feeling bad for beating each other. You look at girls at world team trials, you look at Olympic trials, like those girls are scrapping. Like,
yeah.
It's different. If you go to a youth tournament, yes, I understand that. And even at practices, like girls against girls at practices, like I've felt that myself as well. Like, wanting to like pull back or take it easy because you don't want to make your teammate mad at you or upset, or also sometimes you just get talking too much, you just like get talking and laughing, and I get in those modes too, and then you're like, oh shoot, we need to focus on what we're doing here. So yeah, I understand how the boys can like push you in that way, but what you think about, like, maybe the girl who's a tough girl who's like, oh, I need to compete against the boys because there's no other competition out there for me. Like, and I sort of disagree with that thinking, because although I do think there are benefits in practice, I think that they can get the higher level competition by going to higher level competitions. Like, if you're a high school girl right now, it's kind of a trend to compete against college girls. Like, we went to the Stevens Point Open, and there were a bunch of high school girls competing there because it's sort of a trend. So if you need to push yourself, I think instead of pushing yourself by competing against the boys, especially like in, say, like the high school level, I mean, that's tough to compete against the boys, right? Maybe youth, you can get away with it for a little bit. Middle school starts to get tough. High school's tough, to continue competing against the boys. But yeah, so I think just go to higher level tournaments, go to girls college tournaments, or if you want to push yourself and a higher level tournament is not possible for you travel wise or whatever, then go up a weight class.
I didn't even think about that one. Lauren, you're literally stealing all of my ideas because it's okay. I had the same thing as that, like some dominant girls, because one thing I noticed is that, the top 1 and 2 girls in the state in many weight classes, maybe not in 132, but there is such a huge gap between the 1 and 2 and the 3 and 4s, like almost night and day. And so some of these girls are walking through competition, and let's say you have someone like a Harlow Skenador or Taylor Whiting or Carly Chesker, and they're like, well, I want to do good once I make it to college, or I want to win a Fargo title, and all they're wrestling the whole year is girls that they can smash. Not saying anything bad against their competition, but they're going to want to start to get more competition. And that's what I was saying, most of them are going to college opens anyways, though.
Yes. And that's good. And that's great. But I have another thing with most of them are wrestling girls they can smash. Good. Let them smash them, because it's going to make the people that they're smashing better. And it's going to build their confidence in themselves. I don't know if you guys know the story. Have you guys, so Dan Gable, at University of Iowa, it was told, legend has it, like, right, that in order to help give his athletes confidence when they were going to compete in Carver the first time, I can't remember the guy whose name it was, but they told me the story. So I have no reference to fact check to see whether it's true or not. So legend has it that Dan Gable needed someone to compete on his dual team. And he needed someone. He had it was like a short period of time to get him ready, because like the number 1 guy got injured or something. Man, my facts are not sounding very good right now, but the number 1 guy got injured. So he needed his backup to be prepared to wrestle in Carver. And if you've never wrestled in Carver, it's kind of like a really big deal, because the way the arena sits, and it's like, it's kind of like gladiator style, and right. And like the crowd and all that can affect your performance. And so legend has it, that Dan Gable, in order to prepare his number 2 athlete in the lineup, had him wrestle one of his teammates at a duel as an exhibition. And he told the teammate, you will lose to him. You are going to go out there and you're going to take a fall, and you're going to let your teammate beat you, because we need to raise his confidence and to prepare him to wrestle against, I don't know, Iowa State or whoever it was. And so he told his athlete that to give him that confidence to go out there and compete. So the reason I say that story is because if these girls are going out there and they're high level, they're elite girls, and they're smashing their teammates, good, because it is going to prepare them on some regard for college, in the sense that they're going to have that confidence that I know how to go out there and get it done. Where when you're wrestling against the boys and just getting smashed all the time, you're like, oh, I don't know if my shot's going to work. I don't know if when I get to the leg, if I can finish it. So it's a little bit of a balance between both, I think.
Yes. Okay. I agree with you, but I will say, let's say I was competing at a tournament, I'll say the Stevens Point Open, but I had some good competition, so maybe even worse competition. If I'm just competing at like college opens right now that have pretty not like girls that I can smash, we'll say, and then all of a sudden I have to go to senior world team trials, and I've been smashing everyone and I'm not used to any resistance, then it's going to be like a wake-up call for me. Like, let's say these girls, like Carly Cheska, for instance, is smashing everyone, and then she tries to go wrestle at Fargo. Well, she's not going to be used to having to go the distance with someone. And then I'm just using Carly's name as an example. But, then you're not going to be used to win hard.
Maybe it depends on the personality. Because maybe she has this elevated belief in herself because she's been smashing everybody. She doesn't know she's supposed to not do well.
Don't you think that you get more of an elevated belief in yourself when you win a tournament that's difficult, and that's
some of these high school girls that have been smashing other girls have an elevated perception of themselves because they haven't been smashed. And I'm not saying it's like a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it can work in your favor and it can work against you.
Okay, yes, that's true. And for some reason it kind of reminded me, Lauren, we both dealt with this when we go with kids who were better than in practice, and Brooke, I'm sure you have too. And it's like, oh, I'm not getting anything out of this practice. That was my old perception. But now it's like, well, actually it's forcing me to slow something down, not use as much strength. And now I can focus on getting to my high crotch, which I'm maybe not that good at, and I can get better reps there, And I think a lot of wrestlers do think, well, if I'm not being pushed in practice by these amazing practice partners, I'm not getting better. But I think once you, like for me, I'm not on a college team anymore, but I'm still training, and in a way I have to be resourceful, or sometimes I'm going to wrestle someone that's smaller than me, and that's just who I had to practice with today. And you can even make the best out of that situation and almost use it to your advantage. And I kind of see where you're going with that, Lauren. But I also think, I mean, we know like once in a while you need a practice or you need a tournament where you are being pushed and it is difficult. So then you know how far you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. You need those too.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go into mine for a second, because I just wanted to bring in some stats. And Lauren, you kind of already touched on this, but I just want to say I think the WIAA is slowly making changes. Sorry, my phone just went off. Okay, so I think they are like slowly making changes because they did have the first girls state tournament in 2022, and now it's obviously the 2020. It's going to be the 2025 season once they make this adjustment. So I think they did give girls enough time to adjust. I think the next step is allowing only girls to compete against girls, and I think the way that they're implementing it is good because in a way they are still giving girls a chance kind of to compete against boys if their team doesn't sanction the sport or sanction girls wrestling. And my kind of point was that there's no other high school sport that I could think of where girls compete against boys. And obviously the reason girls compete against boys was because there wasn't enough numbers, like Lauren said. But I think there is now. And so I have some stats. So in 2019, the amount of females who purchased a USA Wrestling card in Wisconsin was 647. So that was in 2019, 2020. In 2021, there was 503. In 2022, there was 825. And then in 2024, there was 1,607 USAW memberships. So when they first started Girls State, there was 825 memberships. Now there is 1,600. So it doubled since 2022 for USA Wrestling.
2 years. So in 2 years, it doubled.
Yes, and that's just USA Wrestling cards. So that's not even high school girls, female wrestlers. That's just girls who are wrestling in like the postseason, preseason, off season. So I think that there is enough girls now. There is enough girls to do this. Although it sucks, it's going to be a weird adjustment period. Some people are probably going to be mad that they can't wrestle boys. But I think that in a couple of years, it'll just start to be the norm, like how it is where there's girls basketball and boys basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not that they can't wrestle boys. They could go to a school that is not sanctioned by girls wrestling, but then they're going to prohibit their own opportunities to win a state title.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of good too, because then it's going to encourage those schools that are not recognized to have a girls team to move that direction, which is also what we want.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like they implemented this rule, and in a way it's like kind of forcing people without forcing people to do this thing, and to provide those opportunities.
Yeah. And then I guess the only other sport where boys are competing against girls is the transgender stuff, and I guess we don't need to get into that.
Yeah. And that's like, well, okay, and not getting too political, but in that whole issue, we see the discrepancies between boys and girls.
Yeah.
And so we can see it so clearly, especially in boxing. So why are we still competing against boys?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. But I agree. I think it will start to get like more teams to sanction. Maybe that's the wrong word, but to adopt girls wrestling, and then there will be more opportunities, and it'll be seen kind of as its separate thing. And I think it's going to be really good for the sport. The next step, though, I think, is just making it freestyle.
Yeah, I'm down. I am all for the freestyle.
I would agree.
But that might take some time.
Yeah,
that will
slowly change the rules. Maybe if they change the one rule every year.
That would be so hard.
That would be hard. And I just say rip the Band-Aid off at that point because we did the modified freestyle rules at what tournament was that?
Preseason Nationals.
Yeah, preseason Nationals. We did the modified, and I thought it was a great idea going into it. And then when I left, I was like, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible because everyone was confused. Coaches, parents, athletes, refs. Everyone across the board were on the same level of confusion because even what the rule said, it's the application of the rule. So when not everyone's on the same page, it's very confusing. And when it's like kind of in between both of them, and you're in the gray, there's no black or white. Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. Okay. So you just say rip the Band-Aid off. Sorry, Brooke.
Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off. Just go freestyle. But I think that'll probably definitely take some time.
I will take some time. I mainly like thought about how I feel like a lot of the girls teams right now do not have like their like individual girls team coaches. So like the head coach of the boys and like boys team is the head coach of the girls team, and they would have to have a head girls coach to make that happen. So like that coach can focus on maybe the freestyle, and then the boys coach can focus on the folk style for the boys. But like imagine being a head coach and having to like teach like the boys folk style and then the girls like freestyle, especially when it's just like they're not doing it full, like a lot of them are doing it year round, so it's like that's just a lot for them. That's like the main thing I thought of with that.
And then that's very, I mean, very true. And then you get into like, okay, yeah, like the coaching thing, like if the coach doesn't have the knowledge of freestyle, but then it is on them to like to learn it so that they can better help their athletes. But if they don't have that knowledge of those skills, you know, helping their athletes get to where they need to be in order to compete, freestyle is not the easiest if they don't have that knowledge themselves. And then I guess the other thing would be referees. So there's already a shortage of referees in folk style. And then, you know, freestyles, there's more of a niche with that. And then also most of the freestyle refs are reffing college things for the females because it is freestyle in college for the women. So I think you're going to run into a problem with referees. And I'm not saying that we don't grow it and that we just get more refs and then, you know, better educate coaches on freestyle. I think that's a great thing. And I'm all for moving towards more freestyle, but we got some folk style diehards.
Brooke's point made me think about, well, yeah, you are going to kind of need more coaches then, or coaches who want to coach freestyle. And then I think, well, it's going to kind of be the girls in our generation. But how many
say that?
Really? Well, then how many of us are going to choose to coach a high school team over a potential college team? And the reason I say that is because there's so many coaching opportunities in college now, and those spots are going to be filled first. And then who's going to be left to coach the freestyle? And there's already such a limited pool of options to choose from. So I don't know. It's like that would be a very difficult thing to find. And how many coaches are going to want to learn freestyle right now to coach their kids? And I don't know.
Also, another thing I thought of is some of the girls that like were close to like our age and graduated high school did go back to their high schools and are now like coaching like the girls on that on that team, but they didn't like ever really wrestle freestyle. So their like knowledge is in folk style, most of their knowledge. And then so that is another thing is like they don't know a lot of the freestyle to like then like switch over and coach these like these girls. So that could be another thing you could run into is because a lot of girls just know folk style. Obviously now a lot more girls are doing both, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought of that too.
I just thought of a question or an idea. What do you guys think if we started freestyle at the youth level? So all youth tournaments for girls are freestyle.
I mean, I think that they would be then better prepared for middle school. Are there not any youth tournaments in Wisconsin for freestyle?
There are, but I'm saying we make all of them. So we don't make high school freestyle. We make youth freestyle.
Well, but then you're under preparing them for high school if we don't change over. So then they're not prepared for high school wrestling.
We change over
if it's folk style. When do you change over though? If everything's only freestyle, if everything at the youth level is only freestyle, then they're underprepared and they're going to get smashed in folk style and they're going to get called for locking hands a lot and stalling for running out of bounds.
Oh my gosh. Hands.
So ready? So this is kind of a crazy idea. Fourth grade and lower, so elementary school, they do freestyle. And then once the fourth graders are in high school, it switches to freestyle. And then we're all freestyle.
in middle
Wait,
school.
once they're in fourth
Middle
grade,
school?
then they go folk style. What's the purpose of that?
That would just
So they can go through the folk style system. Never mind.
Or then they quit because it's a new style and they don't want to learn it.
That's true. It was just,
that would be
it was
so
a good idea.
confusing for
I
the
appreciate
little
your
ones.
thought process, but
I'm just trying my best to get freestyle in.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I have a couple more things with the original topic. I think that, it might be hard for some teams to fill their roster with girls. So in regions where there aren't as many girls, it may be harder to have a competitive season or competitive opportunities, kind of like we were talking about, or you're going to have to travel more. And it might be difficult. Let's say you have 2 girls who are on a team. How are they going to get the resources, or who's going to take them to the tournaments? It's just going to kind of be weird for a couple of years until they can fill the teams. And yeah, I don't know. That's really all I had for the cons.
yeah, it's gonna be weird.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have anything else?
No, but there's always there's always transition in anything that you do.
Yeah.
And whatever you do, you have to have that transition period, and we're just in that weird transition period. So
that's true.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so I think we're good. I have a question, but I think we're like good for today. So I'm gonna ask you guys if we can do this next week. If this is a question we're gonna talk about next week. Do you guys think there are differences between how a coach should coach the boys versus the girls? So that's what we're gonna be talking about next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything else to add before we end it?
Go watch Brooke compete this weekend.
Is it on live, Brooke?
Yeah, it is. I think it's on
Is it
Flow.
on Flow?
Yeah.
Look at that. If you guys have Flow Wrestling, just transition over to Flow Grappling on the app, and you can just watch it straight from there.
And there's a lot of wrestlers competing at it too, right? It's Victoria
awesome.
Anthony's competing. Helen Morales, Brooke Crawley,
Emma Brunzel.
Emma Brunzel's competing at
Really?
it.
Yeah.
Pat Downey.
Yeah.
Who else? I'm sure there's other wrestlers that we don't know about yet.
What if I was like, what if this is my announcement that I was competing?
Just sent it.
Yeah.
Lauren
Enters. Hey.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with some results and another interesting topic. All right.